Every day, thousands of animals and plants and the people that inhabit the Pantanal region in Brazil play their part in a spectacular display of life. The waters dominate the region, and their seasonal rise and fall keep the Pantanal healthy. The constant changes in the landscape ensure the rich biological diversity of the Pantanal. From above, the Pantanal floodplain looks like a single vast living being, a rich complex breathing organism in which everything is connected. This is the Upper Paraguay River Basin, and the Pantanal is located at the very heart of it. The relief of the land plays a key role in the Pantanal's formation. You can see there is a chain of hills forming a highland crescent. It is a complex system of springs, streams and rivers. Here the waters rise and flow down to inundate the vast Pantanal floodplain in the lowlands. On their way, the rushing waters carve out breathtaking landscape, but they also carry with them everything that is happening in their path. As if it were an immense lung, the Pantanal takes a whole year to breathe in and breathe out. The annual ebb and flow cycle begins in the rainy season. November marks the beginning of the 3 consecutive months of rains in the highland region, and the rivers begin to rise. More and more water flows down into the floodplain. The Pantanal is a huge lowland plain surrounded by high plateaus. The great volumes of water coming in from highland streams and rivers spread out over the lowland as if it were a shallow plate. Three main factors contribute to the flooding of the Great Plain. At the southern part of the river basin, there are 2 hills blocking the exit and causing the waters to back up. Some months later, the waters that pour in from the north are reinforced by the rains that start to fall in the floodplain region itself. To the south, the 2 hills steadfastly bar the free outflow of the waters from the plain. The overload of waters in rivers like the Aquidauana makes them burst their banks and backs up the waters in the Paraguay River. The flat relief of the floodplain means that the excess waters spread out over a very wide area and remain there for almost 6 months, completely altering the daily routine of the people that inhabit the world's largest floodplain. The waters rise steadily for months, widening the rivers, flooding the land, and forming vast lakes. At full flood, 2/3 of the Pantanal are covered by water, forming a world-unique landscape. People, plants and animals have all adapted to this natural cycle, which makes the Pantanal scenery so different depending on the time of the year. The Pantanal's inhabitants have adapted their way of life to living in regions that may be isolated for long periods. The animals also accompany the rhythm of the rising and falling waters. For some species, food is most abundant during the flood time, and for others during the dry low water season. This immense living being we call the Pantanal is totally dependent on the seasonal flood cycle. That means it is highly sensitive to any impacts on the lowland plain or the highland plateaus that alter the rhythm of that cycle. WWF-Brazil and its partners conducted a study of the Brazilian portion of the upper Paraguay River Basin and found that the basin has already lost 58% of its original vegetation. That is very serious because it is in the upper part of the basin that the springs and headwaters that feed the Pantanal are located. In those areas, unsustainable forms of agriculture and livestock production are destroying forests, drying up springs, and silting up streams and rivers. The construction of hydroelectric plants in the region is another serious threat, as they may interfere with water flow patterns in the region. The Pantanal floodplain still has most of its original vegetation intact. Nevertheless, it is highly vulnerable and suffers greatly from the impacts being generated in the highland region. Among the worst effects are huge quantities of sand and clay sediments being washed down from upstream. They are deposited on the beds of the rivers and in the lakes and the lagoons, altering their volumes and transforming the landscapes. Another highly negative factor is pollution stemming from the discharge of sewage, chemical products, and mining residues into the waters. In addition to those visible impacts, there are the threats stemming from climate change that may exacerbate the region's existing problems. The Pantanal needs to be prepared to face this imminent reality. That is why it is essential to protect the springs and headwaters that maintain the cycle of rising and falling floodwaters, and to adapt economic activities in the region to make them more sustainable. We need to view the Pantanal as if it were a single organism, in which everything is intimately connected. A sensitive environment that requires care and adequate conditions to keep itself alive. Understanding the pathways of its waters and the importance of their seasonal ebb and flow to the Pantanal's very existence is an important step towards promoting actions that will ensure the protection of this immense natural heritage.